I have been thinking a lot lately about how every day we have a choice, many choices a day, to take care of vulnerability or to exploit it in some way. And that starts with myself. If I'm feeling vulnerable, am I gonna pretend like that's not happening and override it in some way, ignore it, be mean to it, or so it really starts, those choices start with myself, and then they ripple out from there. And I get to choose every day. If I encounter something that's vulnerable, like I'm thinking about when I recently, I had trained for a long time to run this half marathon. I was getting ready to run it, and I was walking on the path, and there was this tiny little, and there were many people walking, getting ready for the race, and there was a tiny little frog on the sidewalk. You couldn't even see it really. And my daughter and I immediately went over to it, picked it up, moved it to the side, right? So it's like this impulse to take care of what is vulnerable. And not do for someone what they could do for themselves, but if I can make a choice that might respect and care for my own vulnerability or the vulnerability of someone or some other creature, their vulnerability, the result is vitality. So life flows through when we care for that vulnerability. Most of us have not, I did not learn how to care for that vulnerability as a child in my family system, or not in the schooling systems that I was a part of. In fact, I learned the opposite, to override it because it just wasn't acknowledged. So every day we have these choices to take care of this vulnerability. But what I've been thinking about this month is, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be vulnerable? And it means for me to really be in touch with what is true for me in the moment, what is actually happening for me in the moment. And I don't like this direction where I'm headed. I like that part, that's all great. But I think yes, right. So everything I'm saying is pointing toward. So I do like what I was saying, but it's all pointing toward this deep kind of river of vitality that shows up in all kinds of different ways in me, in all kinds of feelings, thoughts, actions, whatever. But this deep river of life that runs through me, that I can choose to acknowledge every day in myself, and therefore choose to acknowledge in the life around me, whatever it looks like, whatever it's doing. If it's doing something I don't like, or maybe I'm scared of it, or maybe it's something that I'm encountering that's very different from me, that there is a deep river, life force of vitality that's known by many different names in many different cultures. That when I start there, that when I start with honoring that deep vitality, I make better choices. So some stories about that for me that are coming, like to really ground that, are I was thinking recently about being with my dad when he died. And it was my siblings and I were all around him. We were in the hospital. He was young. He died when he was 56, which is only a couple years older than me. And we were in the hospital. It was probably 4 a.m, and the nurse came in and said, "Okay, you all, time to get up. Like, it's his death is near. It's near. It's time." And I was like, "How do you know that it's time?" And she said, "Well, often right before someone dies, their heart rate skyrockets, goes off the charts, because there is a life force in them that is seeking to live while the body is dying, and his heart rate is off the charts." And he died within minutes of her coming in, and so we were all able to be there. But that pattern of life, given it all it's got before the body dies. That is one example of what that deeper vitality is that you can hear in the hallways maybe right now. That deeper vitality is that we just miss over and over again. It's almost like this groundwater that runs underneath everything. And it reminds me also of, I was driving, we had a lot of devastation from the storms, and tree limbs are broken everywhere, extensive power outages happened, all of this stuff. And I continued as I drove out of our driveway to Springhouse every day. I saw this tree that the limb was pretty broken off, like it was hanging by a thread. And a couple days ago, I noticed that the branch that had broken off from the trunk was sprouting green buds. And I was like, oh my God, I've been every day thinking we probably will still chop that limb off because it's hanging off in the driveway, but I was thinking more like this is dead, and that fierce, vital life force is still able to run all the way through that broken thing to push these buds forth. It just shows the tenacity and resiliency of life. And I experienced the same thing in running the marathon, where there's all kinds of fatigue, pain, thoughts that aren't super helpful, and there was something deeper I had to keep my focus on that sustained me through those 13.1 miles. So, as I'm thinking about that deeper vulnerability, that deeper vitality, that it's so important to choose to respect, revere, and take care of, I've been thinking a lot about how values are also that deeper river that guide us as people and as communities and organizations. Many of us haven't really reflected or haven't taken the time or even know what the values are that inform our lives. Organizations may be more likely to do that. And here's the thing, is that we are guided by our values, and when we choose to not follow those values, it's important to pay attention to that choice, because we end up creating the world we live in based on the choices we make that are informed by our values. So these days, as I've been thinking a lot and writing a lot about the tenacity and resiliency of that life force, I wonder about the tenacity and resiliency of our values right now at this time in our country. And what I see over and over again, and have heard even locally and nationally, I recently got a call from an organization that said, we're taking off all of the language on our website and emails and everything around the respect for diversity, particularly with certain groups of people. And we just want you to know that we're still serving those people. We're just not going to put it on our website. And it's all, and we've seen that, everyone's seen that in the national news, major universities of very large local university recently wiped out their efforts to lift up diversity as part of life. And when we do that, we have like, maybe I've heard the abandoning of the value, and then I've heard kind of a story to justify that abandonment. And believe me, I understand people are losing large amounts of money, but it's important to remember that if we're not sticking to what we value, and for us, at least here, it's we understand at Springhouse that life unifies us and it distinguishes us. It unifies and diversifies all forms. And so if we start disrespecting those deeper truths of life, we begin to create a world that I don't want to live in. I don't want if my kids have grandkids or my kids now, I don't want to live in that world where we're disregarding and dishonoring the very nature of life itself. And so, as hard as it is, and there's so much at stake, and as risky as it feels, I wonder if we had more deeper conversations about what it actually means to choose to not stick to our values or stick to them privately, but show something different on the outside, having a little bit more thought and conversation about what's happening to us and to our world as a result of that. So that really is my invitation, and that is a vulnerable conversation. But it's important to return to that groundwater of our values that runs beneath what we can see. Because when we don't do that, we start to unconsciously create a world that is not a thriving world for all.